everyone. Welcome to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I am the advertising manager, and I get to be your host today. Today, we are so lucky to have a new sponsor, Color-Woven. We welcome them. We hope you'll check them out on Instagram and check out all the wonderful products they have to offer. So welcome, Color-Woven. Good to have you here. Today, just a reminder, we will take questions, and I bet we're going to have a bunch the last 15 minutes of the hour. And if you would, please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. But let me say how excited I am to see all the chats already today. Welcome, everybody from everywhere. And we're glad to have you here today. For those of you who don't know who this is today, this is Jane Stafford with Jane Stafford Textiles. Everybody knows Jane, and we are so excited to have her here today. Jane began weaving in 1978. She was exploring both traditional and three-dimensional weaving while she was attending Banff School of Fine Arts from 1981 to 1988. Jane has had the great fortune of earning livelihood based on what she loves most, weaving, and sharing her passion for excellence in cloth. In earlier years, Jane was a production weaver, and she taught workshops throughout Canada and the United States. She worked closely with Louet for over 30 years, creating their early DVDs and consulting on the Jane Loom. Nothing gets past me. It wasn't until I read all about her that I realized the Jane Loom is named after Jane. For years, Jane taught weavers from all over the continent exclusively in her studio. In 2014, she was Teacher of the Year by Handwoven magazine. In 2016, she decided to offer her workshops to a broader student base by creating the Jane Stafford Textile Online Guild, which eventually evolved into the Jane Stafford School of Weaving. She has taught thousands of students around the world. Her episodes move the weaver along on a pathway of structural and artistic development. It really builds from one to the other. She started her 7th season last month. Welcome, Jane. It's so good to have you here. There she is. Hi, Jane.
Hi. Hi, Kathy and everybody. I'm sorry. The sun has
just
moved around here. We haven't had any sunshine on the West Coast for like ever. And right now at 1 o'clock. So I'm moving.
It's kind of appropriate. You know, the skies opened up and showered you with sunshine.
Yeah.
That's what you deserve, Jane.
Just lit me up. So I'll scoot around my desk here trying to stay in the shade.
Okay, thank you.
The cloud just came in.
It's going to be an active group today, I can tell. Well, the first question is always the important one, was which is your favorite tea?
Well, I'm not really a tea drinker.
Oh.
You know, around 4 o'clock every day, I think a wee dram is in order. It's instead of a cup of tea or maybe a hot toddy. There's scotch and tea and a hot toddy. Good reason to get a cold.
There you go. There you go. We don't want to keep you from that today, so help yourself.
All well, right? It's only 1 o'clock here.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Okay.
A little too early.
I've read a little bit about your history, but how did you get started in fiber?
That's always such a funny question. You know, I was raised by my mom, and my mom just taught me how to do all kinds of things when I was little. I never really think of it as getting started in fiber. Fiber's just always been part of my life. It was, you know, she taught me how to knit. She taught me how to embroider. She taught me how to sew. I sewed all my own clothes. So I've always been interested in textiles. And one of my favorite jobs as a child was hanging out the laundry. And I didn't understand it then, but I always wanted to get to hang the clothes on the line. And it's because I wanted to touch all the cloth, and I'd arrange things on the clothesline accordingly in beautiful little.
Oh, that's amazing.
Crazy.
That's a new one. That's an absolute new one. That's great. That's great. Well, one thing I'd heard about you is that when you were 18, you had, I think you took your mom somewhere or you were picking her up or something like that, but you were wandering around someone's house and you found a loom.
Mhm.
And I thought how appropriate that is for you, because when I read more about your history and was learning more about you, I thought that is kind of a theme for you, that you kind of wander around and you seem to find what you're looking for. You find ways to find those things as you're looking for, whether it's your training or your assistantship or your classes. Am I way off base here? Is that true for you at all?
Well, I think that my life has been is being directed by some other guiding spirit. I don't know. I'll never forget that day. I was being nosy, waiting for my mom to come out of a meeting, and it was just going on forever. And so I started to poke around this lady's house and turn the corner, and here was this loom, and there was thread on one side and cloth on the other. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's making fabric. I sewed all my own clothes at that time, and it was like, oh, I could make my own cloth. And from that moment on, I never ever thought of doing anything else in my life. Within a few weeks, I found a way into it. And my first teacher in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Jan, opened her arms and welcomed me into her studio and her life, and got a little Dorothy table loom, and thought I was in heaven.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, lots of things have happened that way, but I'm enthusiastic and I'm open, and that's probably that enthusiasm and being open to new things and trying everything that I could possibly try, or finding whatever opportunities were there and following them. I just always done that.
Yeah, it seems like it's like you two were magnets. You found each other. Fiber and Jane kept coming together as you went down the road there. I like that. You have a great color sense, and anybody who's watched any of your classes or taken your classes knows that about you. So do you think the ability to use color, and here's some images of your wonderful colors, is it something you've always had? Is it something that you've learned and developed? What do you think?
Totally, I wasn't born with an innate color sense. I've been asked this question many times, and when I first started weaving, I would bring my work home and show my mom, and she'd say, "Oh, that's lovely, dear. Were those the only colors on sale?" And she wasn't trying to be mean, but she was a good critic of my color sense. So I was not born with an innate sense of color, and but the thing that taught me how to use color was that I had decided early on that I was going to make a living as a weaver. And so I needed to have a product. And that picture of the blanket on the left, I have made over 1,000 mohair blankets in my life. And so through my early years, I made the same canvas over and over and over. For me, a mohair blanket has 270 warp threads. They're 45 inches long by 80 inches long. And the only thing I could change within that was how I used color. And so for me, I developed everything I know about color and design on that canvas, on the mohair blanket canvas. There was a time when, gosh, I think we had 78 colors of mohair available to us. So I would get my graphics and just weave a blanket, I never made more than 3. And we made 3 blanket warps, which sounds crazy, but it was perfect because I would make 3 different blankets that belonged to a warp, and then we would tie warp to warp to warp to warp. And anyway, I learned it all weaving mohair blankets, and then my canvases changed and morphed into other things like scarves and towels. I love tea towels because tea towels are a great way to explore color and design. You don't have a lot of, it's a tea towel. It's a cone of yarn. And if you blow it, no big deal, but you learn a lot from it always. Yeah.
I think that's one of the hard things, is that there are people that I've met that just, they know exactly what colors to put together. They just know. And then there's some of us who we don't quite have that. And it's encouraging to hear from someone who's so good at it that I too could possibly get good at it, because if I did it more often, right?
Anybody can. The key to learning about color is not hard, you know, and I think it's so important for young and new weavers to learn some of those simple tools right off the bat, because color is the thing that for most weavers, well, we love color. Human beings love color. I love color, I love structure, I love putting the two of them together, but color is always the thing that sort of drives the show at first. And so you can teach anybody about color. All you have to do is teach them to observe Gaia. Mother Nature provides us with the most remarkable color combinations. They surround us all the time. And that's what I use. I use her. I'm always trying to interpret her and her impeccable sense of color.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, some people have like a book full of pictures so they could go back and say, oh, I want these colors together. Is that something that you do? Do you take photographs to keep in mind colors you want to try together? Or you just look out the window and say, oh, that's a good one, I'll use that?
I'm always observing. And I've got 40 years behind me, 40 years of sitting at a loom every day. So heck, if I haven't learned something after all that time, you know, anyway, I sketch, I rip pages out of magazines where I love the color, where I love the graphic that's happening in them. And that's why I teach all of that stuff so early on in the School of Weaving, is because I want to give people those concrete tools into the design world.
There you go. Well, I think in another lifetime, you may have been an art therapist because when I'm listening to you talk, you really focus much more on the process than you do the product, I think. Would you agree with that, or am I way off base?
No, I would, when I'm doing the episodes for the School of Weaving, I do spend a lot of time on process, but always the end goal is the finished textile. You know, you have seen me 10,000 times holding a gorgeous scarf and talking about the drape and the hand and how this feels and how is this going to function. So the end product is very, very important to me. It's always paramount. But the process as a teacher is extremely important to share with the student. You know, I would not be a good teacher if I just showed everything I did. I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. My job as a good teacher, I think, is to show people how I got there. And so that's why I spend so much time explaining my process, to help people who don't even think there is a process. There's a process to everything. Everything that's creative, everything in life, there's a process. So I just share that because my job is a weaving teacher.
I guess one thing that always strikes me when I see you talk, or I see you on a video, is that you really seem to want to hang on to the joy of what you're making, and you want others to feel that. You know, it's not like, here, make a towel. You're like, let's make a towel and let's make it pretty and let's enjoy it while we do. I love that part of it. It's just I'm not real sure what else to call it.
Enthusiasm and love and passion is really probably what's coming out.
Right.
And I love weaving more than I ever have. I'll never get tired of it. I love the exploration. I feel so privileged to be where I am in my life, that I can still make my living teaching, but I'm also learning so much, and I still have so much to learn, and that's really wonderful. I think.
Well, speaking of learning, we have an image here of you while you were a teaching assistant at the Banff Center for the Arts in Banff, Canada. And I've heard you say this was one of the most important things that happened to you in your life, I don't know if it's just your life in general or your life of weaving. Would you tell us some about this?
Well, it wasn't just me being a teaching assistant there. It was my 7 years at the Banff Center.
Okay.
No one could have ever attended the Banff School of Fine Arts for 7 years and not have it change your life. That would be impossible. I started there. I went there as a student, and for 2 years I was a student. I honestly don't know how I got there, because I was the most underqualified student or participant. We weren't really students, we were called participants in the program. Anyway, somehow I got there, and that's that little angel guiding me along. I was 23 years old and as green could be, and ended up there and had my eyes opened and met some of the most remarkable people and students, and eventually I became a teaching assistant. And when you're a teaching assistant to all these awesome, amazing people, you learn so much. There's, again, so much to learn, so much to observe. Anyway, it changed my life. 7 years there, and pretty remarkable years.
Is that program still going?
It's not, sadly, it's not. The textile program is not there anymore. It was extremely strong in all through the 80s and maybe halfway through the 90s. And then it petered out, everything changes. A lot of studio arts were being turfed out of the educational system.
Yep.
Around that time. And
yeah.
It was really too bad, because it was special. And I was there in its heyday, I think. Yeah, it was
Good for you. That's wonderful. And I think good for us, because it really did. I would imagine it probably launched you on your way to what you're doing now.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it gave me so much insight into so many different sides of textile. I was working 3-dimensionally and sculpturally during that time, but I also was passionately studying traditional weaving with Mary Andrews, who lived in the township of Banff. So I was like, everything came together during those years to give me what I needed. Again, there's that little angel, like I got it all. And I am eternally grateful for those years. Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things I heard you talk about is that the role of the assistant versus the role of the student. And I've never thought of it that way. One, that the assistant, their job is to sit and listen and to help out the instructor, versus the student, whose job it is to learn. But the part you talked about that I hadn't really thought that much about is the performance aspect of it, is that as a student, whether it's set up that way or not, that you are expected to do well. That's an internal thing, that you want to do well, not just for the teacher, but for the other students in the class. And I thought about how that must really impact on how you learn. If I don't have any expectations, I would imagine learning would be so much easier and not so stressful. But that was an interesting way, because it really made me think twice about one, teaching and taking a class.
Yeah, well, when you're a student, you have a lot more pressure. You have immense pressure that's generally self-imposed. We go into everything with our ego sitting there nice and bright on our shoulder, and we want to look good. Heck, everybody wants to look good. That statement that you read really was in regards to me being able to observe as an assistant, to observe how knowledge was imparted to all kinds of students. So I was there to assist the teacher, but I was also there to assist the participant, the student. And being in a situation where nothing's really expected for you but to keep everybody happy, I got to see how the way some people taught just allowed another human being to flower and flourish, and how other people talk, that didn't happen, you know? So I think that as far as me being a teacher, it was greatly influenced by observing all these other high profile visiting artists that went through that school at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And I definitely wanted to be the kind of teacher that makes someone flower.
Did you know from the get-go, like when you first got there, that you knew you were going to teach someday?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm like that with everything. You know, I'm naturally enthusiastic about everything that I'm doing. So I said this before too. If someone came in and said, wow, you've got the best carrots I've seen on Salt Spring Island. How do you do it? How do you grow those carrots? I would tell them everything I know about growing carrots. So whatever it is that I'm passionate about, I'm happy to share. And that's just part of me. I think I drive a lot of people nuts around here. Like the delivery man comes by and he shows the tiniest little bit of interest in what I'm doing and he gets a lesson. whether he
wants it or not, right?
Yeah. I used to try and tone that down in me, but the older I get, I've realized, heck, just be yourself, whatever.
Well, you traveled some too for your another journey as you wandered around was you went to India and you traveled there and you taught there, right? And that you said this too was another life-changing experience. So could you talk some about what that was like for you?
Well, I have traveled to India, and the first time I went to India was with Charlotte Kwan. So, you know, there's that little angel guiding my life, and a huge thing that happened in my life was that I met Charlotte Kwan from my handprints in Vancouver.
Huh.
And my relationship with her and my friendship with her, again, changed my life in a big way. So she invited me to teach at the Maewa Symposium, I don't know, 2008 or something like that, maybe 2009. And then she invited me to go to India in 2011 with her as a weaving facilitator for a masterclass workshop. And Catherine Ellis also was on that trip, and Gail Anderson Palm. So we were 3 assistants that were going to India to assist, to facilitate in this masterclass with 27 generational artisans in West Bengal, north of Kolkata. My life was changed. Just to be like, I can't say I taught in India. I shared some ideas. I learned way more than I could ever teach anybody in India about weaving. The skill in their hands, the knowledge they hold in their hands is so remarkable. And so I have gone back on 2 other occasions to assist Charlotte in other trips, but it also, that first trip introduced me to another woman who's become so dear in my life, and that's Kathy Marshall of Sabahar in Addis Ababa. And through that trip, that first trip in 2011, I have been now to Addis twice, and I can honestly say that I did teach there. When I have gone on those trips, I have been in a teaching role, and I consider that to be the best job I've ever had in my life. Yeah, truly wonderful. Anyway, these are beautiful pictures of weaving from this village in Fulia. All plain weave, except for that little piece in the middle, which is basically plain weave in blocks. Simple cloth, gorgeous cloth, elegant cloth. The piece on the right, all of that patterning on the piece on the right that looks distorted, it's a piece of plain weave cloth when it comes off the loom, but the distortion happens by the weaver moving the weft on the warp afterwards. So imagine taking a beautiful piece of plain weave cloth, spreading it on your table and dotting a little grid line, a grid pattern, and then moving along with your thumbs, your 2 thumbs going, pulling them apart, pulling them apart, pulling them apart, and then you stagger the next row. It's all happening in that piece.
Wow.
How can you not be inspired by that?
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I was curious, and I think you may have answered this, but I mean, if you could expand a little bit more on that. So I know that, you know, you go somewhere new, it's life-changing, but every time you went back, it sounds like it built on that life-changing, that there was more every time that you went. Is that true?
Absolutely. Everything in life, every time you do something again, you learn something deeper, you see more. You know, that's just life. I could go to India once a year for the rest of my life and still be absolutely blown away. There's so many different styles of weaving, so many villages that specialize in a particular type of weaving. Maiwa really supports so many extraordinary textile artisans there. So
the thing I've never been to India, but the thing that's always struck me about India is that they really put the cloth, the colorful cloth first. You know, they don't have to make it into a fancy pattern. It doesn't have to be sewn this way, sewn that way. It's like it just drapes there, and it's so beautiful. And you know, you don't have to make it into a fancy pattern. It's just gorgeous yardage. They just wear yardage beautifully.
that's the beauty of a sari.
Yeah.
Sari just gets the end cut off where the blouse is made, and the rest gets wrapped around you, and you end up with a lovely shawl over your shoulder. Yeah, it's beautiful. But there's just so many different styles of weaving there.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put anything into it. You can't make one overall generalized statement about weaving there.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything.
And it's pretty regional.
It's all over the country, everywhere in the country. There's 8 million hand weavers in India.
Right. But do they each region have its own weaving style or pattern?
I would say yes. Generalizing as a generalized overview, yes. There's a really interesting thing about pattern in India, and it really is a language that, especially with the block printers, you know, they all have their own very regional style of block printing. But I was in a subway station in Kolkata with Mahesh, who works with Maiwa in Rajasthan anyway, and he was waving at somebody down the other end of the platform. And I said, how do you know that person? And he said, well, I don't know him, but I know that he's from my village. And I said, how do you know that? And he said, because of the block printing on his shirt. And that was an instant message. That's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Well, I want to go back to something you said earlier, is that you really talk a lot about when we have less, we can do more, and talking some about the simple cloth of what you can do with plain weave, like you just talked about a second ago. And these are, I think, some great examples of that, of you know, how the threads interact with each other just by, you know, tension and shrinkage and that kind of thing. So can you talk some more about when we have less, we can do more?
Well, that is something that I learned for sure, or I certainly had it confirmed in India, that, you know, some of the most remarkable fabrics, or to me, the most interesting textiles that I was seeing were done on simple looms, 2 shafts or 4 shafts, but their use of set, their use of color, their use of supplementary warp thread was so inspiring, that they could take a simple plain weave based cloth and add so much interest. And that's what these pieces are. They're all from School of Weaving Season 3, which is where we start to explore plain weave. There's so much to explore in regards to the use of your reed.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all simple ideas. They're all old ideas. Nothing here is new. It's just different ways to think about them. And then, of course, if you're overlaying graphic and color on top of these simple ideas, you don't need a lot. You certainly don't have to have an 8-shaft loom or a 16-shaft loom to make interesting cloth. You have to have good design, good use of color, and simple technique. And that's what so much of my life is about, is simplicity and elegance, the joy in that. We have so much complexity in our life, so much busyness in our life. I want what I weave to not be busy. I don't need to be overwhelmed by it.
Well, you mentioned the online school, and I think it's amazing that you started teaching online long before COVID. I mean, you really hit the ground running and have kind of been the leader in that area. How did you decide to go online? I mean, there wasn't the COVID issue. Everybody's online now, but you were doing this long before COVID.
I did it because honestly, I did it because I felt bad for so many people who couldn't come to Salt Spring Island to study with me here.
Mhm.
I, for early in my life, I went out and I taught all over North America for guilds. And those were 3-day workshops, 3-day workshops. I didn't like doing them simply because I was always just getting started and it was over.
Yeah.
It's like, heck, I just started. We only get to weave in the afternoon. It was just too busy. And so then I decided I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to see if I can get people to come to Salt Spring. So for 10 years, we ran a 5-day workshop. We did one workshop a month for 10 months of the year. So 1 week on, 3 weeks off, preparing for the next workshop. I did it for 10 years. We had a wait list that was just getting longer and longer and longer. And I got a phone call one day from a lady who had been on the wait list for a couple of years. And she was just so sad that she basically said, I'll never be able to come to your workshops. And I felt so awful that this woman who wanted to learn couldn't come. So that was, long before I got it up and running, but it planted the seed. Okay, I have to find a way to reach more people, make it more cost effective. It was expensive to come here, to fly to Salt Spring, to stay in a B&B or all of that kind of stuff, plus the cost of the workshops. So I wanted to be able to teach to anybody. And I had made the Louet DVDs years before. So I knew that making DVDs wasn't difficult if I had a good crew. And I had the program, I had the idea. A good friend of mine, Ellen, came over and helped me storyboard. She taught me how to storyboard. And so we started filming the very first trial. And I thought, okay, I'll just do the beginner stuff because everybody wants me to teach them beginners weaving. And I don't know that I'm the best beginner weaving teacher anymore because I sometimes forget what a beginner needs, Anyway, it's not bad, that first season. It's pretty good. I thought I would do that. By the time I had done that, and by the time I saw the response to it, then it just snowballed. Anyway, that doesn't really quite answer your question. I think I skipped over a part. I started because I wanted to be able to reach more people and I wanted it to be fairer to everybody. So that's how it
The
happened.
other thing I think's interesting in your classes online is that it's either your passion or you're striving for excellence or a combination thereof, but they're so well done. And not to say you're the only one person doing it well, but when you first started, you can tell you've got experience, you know how this works, and we've all done videos or seen videos that there's issues, and you just do such an excellent job of it. So that's why I was curious, what was the catalyst? For most of us, it's, we're in COVID, but yours was more than that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really have always wanted to do was to teach my workshops as a curriculum, as though it were, if I could create the wonderful university of textiles, I would start people at the beginning and move them along in nice,
Mm-hmm.
gentle, tasty steps where one thing builds on another. And so I thought, well, heck, this is my school. It's my show. I can do it the way I've always wanted to do it. And I am, and I'm getting awesome feedback. We start at the beginning and move along. And, you know, we're in our 7th season, and we are finally starting to see by the end of this year, the interconnectivity between all 4 shaft weave structures.
Oh, wow.
We
Well,
only have 4
I have,
places to put threads on a loom, yet we can create all these different weave structures. Blows me away.
I have to say, I have to confess, or, you know, come clean here. I am a student of the School of Weaving. I love your videos, as people can probably tell. But I have to tell you, when I first started, it's because I heard everybody say what a wonderful, you know, you're going to be a better weaver if you watch these and you do what she says, blah, blah, blah. So when I started, I thought, oh, well, I can learn more about the use of color. I can learn some new patterns, you know, get better at what I'm doing. But I'll tell you, the more I watched you, I found that I watched you teach more. So I paid less attention to about what you were teaching, and I started paying more attention to how you taught it, because I was teaching a beginner class at the time. And I just, that's what struck me, was how gently you walked us all through it and got us there. So it's that passion that you have for teaching. Did you see that in yourself before you started weaving? I mean, were you one of those little kids that said, oh, when I grow up, I want to be a teacher?
Well, not particularly. I didn't think I would be a teacher. I didn't think I was smart enough to be a teacher. I wanted to be a store owner.
Well, that's
And I have
different.
started to have done that too.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
But I just love your passion for teaching. And it's so obvious when we're watching. And that's not true for everyone. So I just want to say that. I also wonder if you weren't a philosopher in a former life, because I heard you say that life is like weaving, that the warp is your ancestry. Make sure I get this right. Your warp is your ancestry, and the weft is all your experiences.
Mhm.
Is that true?
That's true for everybody. For everybody, whether they're a weaver or not. You know, I don't think of that as I'm weaving, but that's what life is. We are all given something when we're born. We start with something, and that generally comes from our ancestry. And then we put all of our experiences into our life. So, yeah.
Well, we have like a gajillion questions. So I'm going to ask you my final question, and we're going to move on. So what is next for you besides season 7? What's next for you?
Season 8, season 9. I still have so many things to do, you know.
That's
I have
good.
workshops in my repertoire, and we're only on the 7th one. There's still all the workshops that I created for Maiwa, and I love those workshops because they're based on the textiles of India. Yeah, there's still so much to do. I've got a lot of work ahead.
All right. Well, let's go to some of the questions, because there's a bunch. You have quite the fan club out there. Some of these are how-tos, and I may skip over those because I think that's more than what we can handle here today. Tyler, it's either Mechek or Mesek. Do you think someone can still make a living as a weaver? And do you have advice for anyone pursuing that path, or to be a production weaver?
I think it's possible. I think you have to know your market, and you have to find that market. You know, if you're in a bigger city, you have a better chance. But I think that there is a growing awareness of a renewed desire and appreciation for textiles. I think we're really in a pretty exciting time right now. There's so many different ways to market yourself. When I was a production weaver, we had to go to the big shows. So I would weave for 6 months and then go to a show. And man, did you ever hope? You hoped against all hope that you were going to find the right buyers at the show. And sometimes it wasn't great. You know, for me, one of the reasons that I built my business the way I did was that I couldn't just rely on what I would sell or maybe not sell. So then I started to teach a little bit, and then I started to sell yarn. So for me, all three aspects of building my business, which is it's a healthy business, I needed all three of them. So I don't know, if you have a wealthy market that you can weave gorgeous fabric for, you know, you could do it, but you need to be, you need to know where that market is. You have to know what you want to weave too. You know, just because it's hand woven doesn't mean someone should buy it. It has to be extraordinary. You know, it's true. You know, if you want to sell your weaving, then you got to make it everything that someone is willing to pay a good price for. That means great color. That means great design. That means great hand and drape and durability.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't know if I answered your question or not.
Well, but you said good stuff. That's all that matters. This is an interesting question. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. This is from, I think it's Nina Kennedy. And she said, tell us about your dream team weavers.
Oh, my dream team weavers are amazing. They're all former students of mine. And after, I guess it was in season 3, when I was preparing that season, I wanted to be able to throw out ideas to people and see how they interpreted my ideas. So my original dream team, when I came up with them, they were all students who had been here and had taken that particular workshop in-house. So I knew they knew the material. They had had the blah, blah, blah from me already. And so I contacted a bunch of them and I said, hey kids, you want to play with me? This is what I want to do. I want to do the episode. I want to teach the episode, but I want to show my viewers, our other students out there, what you did with that information. So that's how it began. And the dream team helps me immensely. So you get the lecture, you get everything I wove with it. But then at the end, there's the show and tell. Like, really, that's the best part, is the show and tell. You don't need me. You just need maybe the little bit at the beginning. You can fast forward through me at the loom, you know, if you want. But you got to watch the show and tell, because it's the dream team's work.
How many are there?
They're great. We've had, I think we've got 16 this year. We were 18 last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
So
lot.
yeah, because there's 10 episodes in a year, 9 episodes of weaving, and I want to have several projects in every episode.
Oh, okay.
Done by a dream teamer.
Well, Susan Henry asked, how do you think your instructions or your planning for instructions has changed over the years that you've been doing the School of Weaving?
What has changed?
How has your instructions changed over the years you've been teaching? Like, do you teach differently now than you did when you first started?
No, I think that I had all of that resolved before I started the School of Weaving. But you have to remember, I've been teaching for a long time. And over my career of teaching out in the world where I used to go, I used to try and put so many samples in a workshop and realize that, God, at the end of the workshop, everybody wove an inch off of 12 looms. Like, what the hell is that going to teach you? Pardon me, I'm not supposed to swear. So sorry. What the heck is that going to teach you? Not much, an inch, you know? So I realized, okay, I need to pull back. We'll do bigger samples and fewer. And I started to see that it really was beneficial to the student. So I had all of that kind of under my belt, and all those years of teaching, I didn't teach the same workshop the same way twice. Every time I came home, I would review it, revamp it, change a sample, change the colors. I had to do that to keep myself interested, but I was always striving to make the workshop better. The best it could be.
And it's good. Well, this one is a good question too. She goes, this is from Fazia. Hi, Fazia. She always comes up with good questions every week. You've taught a lot of us to weave, but is there anything you personally would still like to learn?
In weaving?
In anything, I guess.
Anything, in anything. Oh my gosh. That's a really hard question. I don't know. I'm so happy with my life.
Well, you also strike me, if somebody came in and said, hey, I have a ukulele, you want to learn how to do it? You would be like, yes, let's try it. That sounds fun.
Maybe. The only other thing I do in my life other than weave is garden. And I love making baskets with my dear friend Joan Kerrigan. So, but you know, I don't want to become a basket maker. What I love is going to her little workshops, her wonderful workshops, and making a basket with her. And then I come home and look all pleased with myself. And that's all I need. I'm still learning so much about weaving. I feel like a beginner every day.
So what is the name? Somebody wants to know the name of that weaving studio in Addis Ababa. Am I saying that right?
Sabahar.
Oh, okay.
Sabahar.
Okay.
Sabahar.
Did you get that, Mary? I hope so. Ruth Howe wants to know, when you take Jane's online class, do you have to start at season 1, or can you choose a topic that excites you?
You can do whatever your heart desires. You know, I present everything in a curriculum from kindergarten to grade 7. We're now in grade 7, but we started at kindergarten. I personally could weave grade 1 and 2 for the rest of my life and be happy. You know, honestly, it's simple, elegant, fun. So there's nothing wrong with grade 1 and 2. It's no less than grade 7. You can do what you want. The only thing I can say is, you know, there's some weave structures that I do more than once, like turn twill, for instance. We did a sample in season 5 that gave us a good base. Then we added more tie-ups to it in season 6. Now in season 7, we're adding color and weave. Don't jump in at season 7 and expect to understand everything without doing season 5. You know? That's just sort of how it's been designed, because I can't possibly review everything. I always do a little bit of a review, but you do what you want to do. It has been built to build sequentially on top of each other as a curriculum. But if you only have 3 projects to weave in a year, weave the 3 projects you want to weave. You know, you need to be doing this for yourself. So
there's that art therapy thing again. I tell you.
Joyful, and
I tell you,
this is all about your journey.
You're an art therapist in another life. The other, we're running out of time, but there's a couple of things I really wanted to ask you, which was, a couple of people want to know, what kind of looms do you weave on? You have a little bit of everything, don't you? Or do you have basic?
I weave on Louet looms.
Okay. All right.
Marsh and David's.
Okay.
And David's, yeah.
And here's a shout out to your video crew. They do a great job. They do.
I have awesome crew. The School of Weaving could not come to you without the extraordinary work of so many people. I need to say that too. Jeanette and Sandra and the girls that work in the office, and the guys behind the camera. They've changed over the years, but my gosh, I owe so much to Dylan and Miles, who came on this journey in 2016. And, you know, oh yeah, we know how to use a camera, a video camera. Oh great, come on over. That's how it started. But they did an impeccable job. And I hire professional crews now because, well, since that time, because I know We need to be producing a video quality that will last for a long time. It's hosted all on Vimeo OTT. So those videos are secure. They have been recorded at the highest caliber that we can record them. So they will stand the test of time. And yeah, they're a great group.
The last question before we stop today, I have, well, oh, we got a couple more ones. One question is, the woman who said, I'm never going to get to take your class. Did she take your class online?
You know, I don't even know her name.
Oh,
It was so long ago. And it was just another person I was saying no to.
oh,
It was just another person I was saying no to. But what I'll never forget is how sad she was.
yeah.
And that's what got me more than anything. So.
Ouch. Do you warp back to front or front to back? You do both, don't you?
I warp 99% of everything that I weave back to front.
Okay.
I beam first and then I thread. The only thing I warp the other way, front to back, is my mohair blankets. Mohair I warp the other way.
Oh, right. I've heard
Because I
that
can
before.
create a shed and wind on
Right.
it.
Oh, here's from Robin Becker. I've been a member of the weaving school since the beginning. Jane has been an extraordinary teacher. I'm now in a study group and back to season 1 and still learning. Thanks, Jane. That is true. I mean, there's one season, I bet I watch it over and over and over again. I'm glad to hear other people do it. I just figured I was a little slow on the uptake, but it's good that you can go back and relook and try to figure it out.
And that's what I love about the school, is that nothing goes away. And you know, sometimes I have to answer questions for people and I'll go, well, I don't remember what I did way back then. That was 6 years ago. So I go back and I find the video and it's like, I get all excited again and go, oh, that warp. I love that warp. I want to weave that warp again. So it's cool.
But here's a good question. How did you end up on Salt Spring Island?
Well,
Is it really an island?
yeah, it's an island. You can
Okay.
to get here, you have to take a ferry or a float plane.
Really? It's really an island, not a
Really an island,
bridge over to it.
and it doesn't have a bridge.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was at Banff for those 7 years, and then my ex-husband, his family lived here, and
Oh, okay.
we moved here for that, and there you have it. I hated it when I first moved here, just so you know. I had lived at the Banff School of Fine Arts on campus for 7 years. And then I lived in a little house on Salt Spring that had rodents running in it, a wood stove. I didn't know how to split firewood. It was awful. And I was cold. It was so damp and wet.
Oh, yeah.
And now I've hardened up. I've toughened up. I can light a fire faster than you can say stink. And I'm warm. And I love it. And I couldn't imagine living anywhere else.
Well, that surprised me. I thought you were going to say, I've made the house better, blah, blah, blah. Instead, it was I toughened up. It's like, yeah,
I toughened up. Yeah.
That's good. I don't know what this means. And if you want to say no, that's fine. But Esther Gilbert says, I'd like to hear the story of finding a higher guidance. Do you know what that is?
I'm not 100% sure. I would assume, are you asking if I'm spiritually motivated? A higher guidance?
I don't know. Maybe that's something for another day.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to know if you would do a spin-off from the School of Weaving, where would you go next? They're trying to get you out of Salt Springs.
If I could do a spin-off, well, you know what, my dream for the future of the School of Weaving is that I can eventually have guest instructors.
Ooh.
There are so many extraordinary weavers out there. You can just get lost on Instagram and Facebook and all these groups. My gosh, it's just so overwhelming sometimes. But I look at some weavers out there and their extraordinary body of work. And I would love to get to a place. I still have some of my own curriculum that I really feel I need to get out and to explore it further, because I weave a lot for every season. Even though I've done this stuff forever, I'm trying to take it further and kick the lid off the box with everything. But I would really love to see the School of Weaving continue so that it could always be there, but we have new, younger teachers. You know, I'm getting more and more white hair all the time. And there's so many talented youngsters out there.
Oh, somebody wants to know if you've ever done backstrap.
I have not. I tried once, and it's probably the hardest weaving in the world to do.
Really?
Oh yeah, your entire body has to be the tensioning device for your warp. Every move you make affects the tension of your warp. I'm a person that can't sit still. So
I guess I shouldn't try it either.
I have tried it, and I think I have the highest regard in the world for all backstrap weavers. They are true masters of the loom, or mistresses.
It says, when you travel, do you take a loom with you? And if so, what kind of a loom or weaving do you do while you travel?
I don't take a loom with me.
Okay.
No, I work with their looms. When I go to Ethiopia, I work with them on their looms.
Okay.
I did take a loom to Jawaja in India and left it there for them to do sampling with them.
Oh,
So
okay.
I took them a Jane loom because they couldn't take looms out of production. You know, that's the reality there, was that there are these amazing rug weavers.
Oh.
And so the idea of sampling, of playing, of taking a loom out of production, a big loom out of production, that's extremely frivolous. So, but I wanted to teach them things, and they wanted to learn. They wanted to learn. So I took them a Jane loom, and I did some instructing for twice. I went to Jawaja to do that. And the most interesting thing about that, taking them a loom, was that they could take that little table loom with them to trade shows. And at the trade shows, they could demonstrate. And to me, that is, you know, they were trying to sell their carpets to the general public who had no appreciation of how that carpet came into being. And they said that when they started to bring the table loom and demonstrate at these trade shows how their carpets were woven, they started to sell more. And that's education. That's sharing the story, bringing everybody along for the ride. Everything gets better.
Well, I've never seen this many questions. This is amazing. People have suggestions for your new thing. They want to know, are you going to write a book? They want to know if you're going to start a school on training teachers. I like that one. Have you thought of either one of those?
I have thought about having a workshop on training teachers, because I love, every time I hear that somebody is teaching new weavers, it's like, yes, let's get some more. But I do think that I have possibly something I could offer to people to keep those young students there, or whatever age students, those new weavers. I think I could contribute from what I've learned about teaching over the years. So yes, I've thought about doing that. I've thought about writing a book, but I'm not a really good writer because I write the same way I talk, which is way too many words. You know, you'd just be reading forever and ever, and I'd go off topic. So I don't know. I think about doing visual books, just images, but I don't know if that would sell. I don't know. There's so many good weaving books out there. I don't know. I think I do a better job of the videos, honestly.
Well, I can't believe it. The hour is up. Jane, thank you so much for being here today. It has been wonderful. I do appreciate it.
Oh, well, it was my pleasure. And
so all of you who've been listening and watching, and you're hearing all this information about her school, go to janestaffordtextiles.com. And you're just getting flooded with hearts. This is so pretty. go to janestaffordtextiles.com and check it out. Somebody suggested that you drop a little hint to your Valentine that this would make a lovely Valentine's Day present. I have to agree. And check it out. See if this is something that you would be interested in. And Jane is a wonderful teacher, as you can tell by just listening to her today. And we do appreciate you being here. We also want to thank our sponsor. We were glad to have Color.Woven be our sponsor today. It's the first time for them. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. If you're interested in being a sponsor, your guild, now we're getting groups of people who are banding together to be sponsors. That's new. Please go to our website, www.weavespindye.org, and you too can be a sponsor of Textiles and Tea, or you can give me a call here at the office if you have more questions. We would love to have you come on board. If you are interested in supporting HGA, one way is like you're doing with Textiles and Tea, if you pay for a sponsorship, and also through your donations to the Fiber Trust. Because just to remind folks that all these programs that we do are not funded by just your membership. The funding also comes from donations to the Fiber Trust and being a sponsor at this event or any other event. And we really do appreciate it because it allows us to do more. We can put more programming on, and we're excited to see what's next for us too. We want to remind you that you can watch an episode. I'm sure you're going to watch this one again. You can watch the episode on Facebook page, HGA's Facebook page. It's there right now. You can watch it, and it will be uploaded to YouTube. And I encourage you all to subscribe to YouTube, because when you do, they will send you a notice that something has been posted. It takes us a few days to get that up, but we'll get it up when we can. Next week, we have Carl Stewart, who's going to come and talk with us. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you, Jane. It's been an honor to have this hour with you.
Thank you so much.
It's wonderful having you here. Hope you all have a wonderful week. We will see you next week. Happy tea.